Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm just going to wait a second to make sure it appears. Yeah, there it is. Excellent. All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal, and I'm with Melco's application team. And this, I'm trying to get to where I can see the comments, so sorry. The screen on Facebook decided to be weird. All right, there we go. Comment. Here. All right, I think I can see comments now. Anyway, my name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's application team, and this is our weekly Facebook Live. Good morning, Alexandra. I haven't done this in a few weeks. Had a little issue. I know Scott and Nate did last week's, but we're back. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. I have 2 questions, which really are 1 question. So please type some in. If you see me looking squirrely-eyed, it's because I have a second monitor and I can only see 4 comments at once. So that's what I'm looking for to make sure I don't miss any questions as they go by. All right. So the questions that we had was, pretty much how do I do something like this? These are really related. How do you manipulate a quilt square pattern to be used like a decorative fill? Okay, and the other is, can you do continuous quilting on the machine, and how would you go about doing that as the design continues? Both of these are related to decorative, so if you haven't played with the decorative feature, it's a whole lot of fun. Probably one of my favorite things to play with. So let's go ahead and get into DesignShop. And I drew about half an hour ago, so apologize. It's not the prettiest thing, but I drew this. So a decorative fill is one which will allow us to create what you saw in that picture, where you take a fill pattern and make it fill a shape that isn't just open, right? So it fills within boundaries. Now, first off, you have to have your decorative fill. All right. If you've never created these on your own, one thing you can do is decide what size you want it to be. So, good morning, Hal and Anita. The first thing to do would be to decide how big you want it, right? So I'm just giving you a starting point right here. So let's say you want it to be a 5-inch square. All right. So all I did was I chose the vector feature just to give me some boundaries. And then I select, so vector, click on the square, and then I did a left click. Now I have it, so now I want to scale it to the right size. So down here, I'm going to type in 5 inches and 5 inches and get it roughly close. All right, so when you do that, you can print this out or just take a rulered piece of paper, right, and block off the shape you want. Then grab your pencil and don't pick it up. Draw whatever pattern you want, your scribble scrabbles, starting on one point and ending on that same line at the other point. Okay, when you do that, that'll allow you to have, good morning, a repeat pattern that, again, starts here, ends there, and when you stretch it out, it'll be able to continue and nest together. All right, so that's to create your own, take a grid, some sort of paper, draw it out, grab your pencil, don't pick it up, and scribble out whatever the design is you want. All right. Once you do that, you can take a picture of it, open the picture. I just did it directly using vectors, so I chose a little box, and I started at one point, ended on the other. It is important when you create your decoratives that it's your start and end point be on the same line. All right, so if I were to draw, let's just pretend this is a picture, not a vector, and I want to trace my work now. Okay, so I want to select my walk input method, and I'm going to do a walk normal. Start on one point. I'll go back and fix that, but now you notice I'm not tracing it exact, so you can see the difference. All I'm going to do is trace around my shape, right? And you'll want to, this is going to be similar to a free motion quilt pattern, right? Where you're going to have it repeat. You want to fill in the shape. So that's, after you decide what your shape is going to look like, you just run around tracing it. Okay. And the key here is to make sure everything is, let's see, to make sure it's all continuous, right? So you'll notice I'm going to have some overlap things that don't really work. So all I'm doing is using my left click and right click around here to trace the shape. And you don't want to hit enter, you just want to have the same shape going around. And you can tell I'm not tracing it closely on purpose, just so you can see the difference. I know when I do these, I draw them out on a piece of paper, and then I'll usually trace a, oops. All right, so what if you do that? All right, I got a few points that I really just don't like and I want gone. All right, so rather than hitting escape, if I hit escape, it'll cancel the whole thing. If I hit enter, it'll end and I've got to start over. So rather than that, I want to get rid of points, so I hit the backspace key. Okay. Good morning from Three Rivers, California. Hi, Stephen. Good morning, Patty. All right, so you hit backspace, and that gets rid of your last point so that you can continue on with your left click, right click, tracing your shape. So I wasn't planning on tracing this whole thing for everyone since I already have it drawn, but you kind of get the idea. All I'm doing is running around badly tracing my shape for y'all, okay, using left clicks and right clicks. All right, so whatever the shape you want, you just, run around tracing it. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to, actually, why don't I do this just for grins? I'm going to go back into my ending point right here. And I'm going to hit enter. So that is not the whole shape. If I move it, you can see. I'm going to delete that guy. All right, so that's ugly, but it's a start. What you would want to do before you actually create your decorative pattern is clean it up, right? So if you don't want these overlaps, like I don't typically like those on my quilting type patterns, I would just go move my points around, clean up the shape to whatever I want it to actually look like. By moving the points around, changing the vectors, like I'd want that flower touching the circle, I'd want that actually looking more like a circle, so on. All right, so you do any cleanups you want, and then from there you'd select it, select your shape, go save custom shape, and I like overwriting test over and over until I get what I like, till it's done. Choose it as a decorative stitch and say okay. You can tell I do this a lot, so if I already exist, replace it. Yep. All right, so I also have this one that I already created as a walk normal and saved it as another one called sunflower, so I can show you. All right, so what do you do with those? Well, again, I just went to a new file so you can see it. I do a walk normal. I'm going to change that to a decorative, and I'm going to go to the other one I already made, which is sunflower. And if I draw a line, hit enter, you'll see I've got a pattern. And by doing it where I can see multiple repeats, I can see areas on here that I should probably clean up, right? It's too obvious of a gap, which means on my initial shape, I'd want to change this to kind of come nest better. So you can play with it to try and kind of tweak your pattern to be what you want it to look like. Now, the original question is, well, how do I get that to look, fill a shape? All right, again, I just drew, I guess I can draw it for y'all so you can see. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to draw a fill as a rectangle. All right, so I draw a fill, and I'm going to take whatever points I want a straight section, and I'm going to add a right click, hold my control key, and drag it down. And I'm going to change the angle on this guy to 0 just because. All right, so I've got myself a fill with some sort of, it's just really the point of this is it's a different shape. So I'll take that, and instead of having this as a fill, I'll change it to a decorative. And I don't want beads, I want my sunflower. So let's change it to sunflower. And now I've got that shape filling that area for me. Okay, so whatever pattern you end up wanting to use, you would take it, fill it. Now keep in mind, when you're using these decoratives, you can play with them as well. So if I go into the properties of that fill by selecting on the shape, right clicking, go to properties, double click, whatever it might be. Here you'll see I have a width and a height. Well, you can play with those to get it to be a tighter fill or a smaller, whatever you want, right? So there, I can make it smaller to fill in more area. Okay, so that's how I would do it. I'm sure there's other ways, but when looking at those kind of square quilting patterns and making them apply, I use these when I'm doing big bags. I'll take that, for instance, I'll take the big hoop, like that one. Okay, so I'll take a massive hoop, and then I'll digitize, you know, a quilted bag, right? So I want to do a big old bag. Well, again, I do it the exact same way. I'll draw whatever shape I'm going for. I'll just do a box to be simple. Okay, so I've got a fill. I don't want it to be that. I want it to be a decorative. And 0, let's make that the sunflower. There. So now I got a quilted pattern that I can, you know, I can quilt, you know, hoop my stabilizer that I want to use, some quilted batting and some fabric, and make it go. All right. So the other one was, how do you set up for continuous embroidery? So there is a video that, there's a question. One, I need help digitizing for Puff. Okay. And then another one, will Milka have an update or enhancement for the software that is similar to grand format embroidery? I have no idea what that is, so I'll have to go look it up and see what it is before I can answer that. So I apologize. Yeah, I don't know what that is to be able to answer that. Maybe one of the guys can type in if they know. All right, so with the Puff to that one, go ahead and there's a link posted for you on how to digitize for Puff. Puff is a different animal, as you're probably aware. You lower your density, and the main thing is you need to make sure you're capping off things or pinching your stitches. Meaning, if I'm going to do a column, let's see, I'm going to do just a column, and I want that wider, so let's say 40 points. So if I'm going to do a column, I can't stitch this as a puff design because the needle penetrations are what's actually cutting your puff as you sew, right? So right here, I'm going to have needle penetrations on this side, needle penetrations on that side, but I got nothing cutting my puff here. So in that document and some of the videos that are linked, what you'll see is they'll talk about how to cap that underneath it. You're either going to have to pinch the stitches, and what I mean by that is do this as a column of some sort, like a column 1, where you're, if I hit enter, where you're dragging all the stitches to one point and pinching it together, so that way you'll have needle penetrations across the top to be able to penetrate the puff so you can rip it off cleanly. Or another technique you can use is, before you go and sew this column, you would actually sew another column underneath it. Pretend that's underneath, so that these needle penetrations are closing that end for you. All right, there's a lot of really good details. Let's see, in the link they posted, let's see if it's the one I'm thinking it is. Since I didn't put, yeah, so in that file that they posted, there's links on a document. There's some sample puff files that you can study. There's a bunch of different videos and things you can look at, as well as a document and an article that kind of goes over all these different techniques that you need to pay attention to for puff. So I highly recommend reviewing those. Plus you get the sample designs that really break them down, study them, see how they pinch the stitches, see how they cap the different ends of things. You can learn a lot from that. So let's see, another question we had was, how do you do continuous embroidery, similar to what you would do on a long arm? So there is a video that Nate did, I think. Yeah, it was like a holly. It was done around Christmas time that had a design. It was a holly thing that went from point to point to point to point. That is similar. The technique is the same as you want for like a long arm quilting pattern, but what you would actually need to do for quilting is use the decorative. All right. So how do you set it up? Well, first off, I'm going to go to a new file, and let's say we want that same sunflower that I'm going to do, that I was going to do. So what you would do is set it up. Oops. All right. So I did a walk normal. I'm going to change that to a decorative, and I'm going to change that to sunflower, and that's only one. I want it bigger than that. So if I want to make it fill the large hoop, I've got to change my hoop. So I did that quick. If you're not sure how to change the hoops, I always just right click on this hoop icon and that brings up your hoop manager. You can also get to the hoop manager up here somewhere. Tools, hoop setup. That'll take you to the same place. I usually just choose to go to the icon here, right click, and you'll get this. All right, so first off, what I want to do is create whatever it is I'm going to repeat. And all right, will that fit in the hoop? Let's see if I move it to where we'd actually sew it. Yeah, it'll fit. Okay, so when you're doing these, they need to start and end, and depending on how you're going to do laser alignment. And I actually have got to where I leave the laser alignment commands in this presentation so I can reference them for y'all. So laser alignment, if you haven't played with it, is a really cool feature within your OS that allows you to take a design and perfectly place it, whether it's going to be over a pocket, like you're going to do a logo over a pocket, you would align to the pocket and have it center, or in the case of continuous embroidery, you'd want to set up your design so that you're always starting, you know, jammed all the way to the left, for instance. Well, if I'm going to go all the way to the left, this would be the key code that I'd want to use. Laser left. So I'd navigate to my first point. I'd say laser left. I go to my second point and I do laser right. And then we do laser bullseye. And what that's going to do is take the design and line it up along whatever 2 points you just said, and then position it all the way to the far left. So when you're trying to do continuous embroidery, as in a quilting pattern, that's exactly what you're going to do. So you would first hoop your item and just do the first pattern. Okay, and it does help to chalk a line because you're going to need some horizontal line to give you your 2 points. All right, so you chalk a line along your starting point and, you know, laser left. I would just run the first one, honestly. All right, and then after that, when I go to hoop the next thing, this is already sewn. Right, so I've already sewn it once. I will go hoop it, make sure that point that we ended on right here is still there within the hoop so I can reach it when I go to laser align, and then you would have your chalked line going this way. Okay, so you'd have either a piece of tape or something chalked on your actual item. So then what you're going to do is go hoop it. You'll come over to this point, you'll do laser left, you'll come over somewhere here on that same line, and generally the longer you make it, the straighter you'll end up having it. So you come over here, it can be wherever, even crooked. So let's say you hooped crooked and it's not perfectly straight. All right, so you come over as far as you can, you do a laser right, and then immediately on your keypad, click laser bullseye. And what that'll do is it'll take this pattern and it'll rotate it and center and move it to the left on the line. So that will allow you to then sew it again as a second pattern. And you just keep that up. Okay, I hope that helps some. But that's how I do continuous embroidery on it. I just, you know, keep on going with the quilt pattern. Okay. All right, what other questions do we have? Because that was, let me go back to my list. We had so we covered that, and then how do you do continuous quilting? All right, so I've got all those. What other questions? I don't see any others. All right, well, make sure you're sending in your questions, okay? You can go to applications@melco.com and email them there. When these events get posted on Melco International's page, you know, go to that event and type in any questions you might have, and we'll get to them there. But I don't see anything else typed in. I guess I'll hold for just a little longer to see if anyone else has anything. And if not, I guess we'll call it a, it's not that early, so 20 minutes. We'll call it a day and start again next Friday. We'll be back. All right. No other questions? Okay. Well, you guys have a wonderful weekend and have fun sewing. Make sure to write any questions you have down during the week. You know, I got when I first started, I had a notebook and I just write stuff down so that I can, whenever I talk to someone or when we have these events, you can type them in and we can get your questions answered for you. All right. Happy sewing all. I will talk to you guys next week.